Benji Marshall, one of the game's greatest, a name synonymous with the NRL. We have been graced with 19 years of Marshall magic, but now one of the greatest careers in rugby league history will be no longer. Let's discuss the career of the most influential NRL star, from humble beginnings in Whakatane, New Zealand, to his emergence on the NRL scene and his rise to the pinnacle to the top of the sport. This is the story of the great Benji Marshall. Benji's career would start in unlikely fashion. Wanting to leave New Zealand, he took tourism as a subject in high school because of an excursion to the Gold Coast that was offered. This excursion would lead to a trial match and ultimately a scholarship at the prestigious rugby league school of Keebra Park State High. He was discovered and nurtured by Greg Lenton, who could see Benji's talent, who at the time was just a touch footy player who hadn't even made any representative teams yet. The Keebra Park prodigy possessed the skill and elusiveness that transitioned well into rugby league. The drop-off passes, his vision, and his famous step provided the base to his young game. He captained the Keebra team during the 2003 season and was a clear standout. His performances would pique the interest of Tim Sheens, the West Tigers coach, who would offer him a contract at the club. In the late rounds of the 2003 NRL season, an 18-year-old Keebra Park prodigy would get his start. His play style was flamboyant. We'd all seen elusive and quick players, but nothing like this. Being incredibly young, Benji would miss games to complete studies for his HSCs, whilst completing 4 games in a debut season with 1 try and sidesteps galore.
5 shoulder reconstructions. I had 1 on my left and then 4 on my right. And 2008, the surgeon pretty much said to me, if you do it again, you're going to have to retire.
Marshall's career was not without various setbacks. During his 2006, 7 and 8 seasons, Marshall would miss a combined 30 games. He would have a whopping 5 shoulder reconstructions as well. Marshall would say he would have left the game if it wasn't for the words of his father to give it one more crack. He explained that he would spend many nights sitting up during sleep and had to wipe his own bum with his left hand. He had the arms of a 50-year-old at the age of 26 with arthritis and could not even perform a basic chin-up from 2004 to 2010. He was given the label injury prone with his 5 shoulder reconstructions, not to mention the tearing of his posterior cruciate ligament. Remarkably, he did not have surgery and just played on without it. He would suffer a major limp in the following games, but believes that if he had suffered another major injury during that season, he would have retired. For Benji and the Tigers, 2005 would be a season of triumph. Sitting in 11th spot around mid-season, the West Tigers would win 8 of their next 10 games and find themselves in 4th place. This would be the first time the joint venture would make the finals, and Benji played confidently and injury-free. In 2005, he pinpoints a game against the Cronulla Sharks as one of the best games he's ever played, and it's clear to see why. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps.
Benji Marshall, now the speed, the footwork again, away from Peachy, passes without looking, away from Richards, back to Fitzhenry. That is as good as you will see on a Sunday afternoon anywhere in the National Rugby League.
An individually brilliant display. His contribution in the 2005 final series would be of great significance. A 50-4 win over the North Queensland Cowboys in the qualifying final would show just a taste of Marshall's brilliance. The semi-final against Brisbane would be his coming out party. The Tigers spent 15 minutes of the game scrambling across their goal line in defence, keeping Brisbane at bay. During that time, Benji would come up with one of the greatest try savers on a charging Darren Smith, literally centimetres in it. The will of a much smaller Marshall held him up and lodged the ball out, saving his side. To conclude this 15-minute defensive stand, Marshall would anticipate and pick off a Darren Smith inside pass and run 90 metres, which would turn the game on its head and help the Tigers to win comfortably. Next, in their preliminary final, Benji described this game as the most physical he had ever played. The Dragons were the favourites, with a star-studded team with Gaznia, Cooper and Barrett all posing threats. A Sheen set play Perla proved to be a huge difference in this game, with Benji, Shane Elford and Brett Hodgson combining. A 20-12 win would put the joint venture into their first grand final, matching up against the Cowboys again. The Tigers were the favourites after their previous bout in round 1 of the finals. This game would prove to be much more tense. 34 minutes in, with the scores locked at 6, the game was then provided with a moment of brilliance. Enter Benji Marshall into this moment of NRL history.
Right foot kick, down the ground, into the in-goal almost. Hodgson cuts it off. Hodgson taken by Norton. He took him late. Marshall skips away. Marshall's still going. Marshall's got Richards coming up outside. Now inside. Richards pursued. He pushes Johnson away.
As Fatty said, one of the great NRL tries. Benji was to say in his book he didn't believe in things happening for a reason after his shoulder injuries, but just think about it. Benji was defending on the wing and out of the backline in this play to limit his shoulder injuries. This put him in a position to kick return and provide this historic highlight. West Tigers would go on to win the 2005 Premiership, with this side going into West Tigers folklore. How about Benji Marshall's international career? He's regarded as arguably New Zealand's greatest NRL player. Selected as the New Zealand's 5'8" in 2005, his chance at World Cup glory came in 2008. New Zealand had been decent in the tournament and were matched up against the Kangaroos in the finals. The Kiwis were massive underdogs and still had never won a World Cup gold. Marshall would start off poorly, failing to put down an easy chance. He would not be discouraged though, stepping former teammate Anthony LaFranchi before a bit of luck would lead to their second try. The Kiwis' consistent pressure paid off. A Slater brain lapse would give Benji a try, who would go on to have a try and 2 goals in the game, with the Kiwis winning their first ever World Cup. His international success would continue into 2010 at the Four Nations tournament. In what is described as one of the finest games in Marshall's career, he took a hold of all the big moments. New Zealand's first try would be off a perfectly timed Benji Marshall pass to the marauding Sean Kenny-Dow. Their second try came from a perfectly weighted outswinging grubber. Something he had practiced with Joey Johns extensively. Gus Gould would say it best.
That is brilliant. You know, I was just talking about living with expectation. And Benji Marshall would know that unless it comes from him, it's not going to happen.
After a misconversion by Marshall, they looked dead and out. With 2 minutes left, Marshall needed to come up with something brilliant. He said throughout the whole set he was seeing how he could win the game. Inside their own 40-metre line on 5th tackle, Marshall would try something. It was this split decision that would change the tournament's outcome.
Marshall shaping the kick, running, passing, a flat ball, across for Kenny-Dow, now for Nightingale, Nightingale down the right flank, the ball was touched by Australia, he's heading for the post, Marshall throws the ball, it's a speculator but it's a try for Kenny.
I will never, ever, ever forget this night and what Benji Marshall has done in the last 11 minutes of this game.
This was the Kiwis' first Four Nations title, with Marshall ending the season a Golden Boot winner, being the International Footballer of the Year.
I think we're pretty courageous to stand up and say this hasn't worked, because, you know, as a stubborn person and someone who wants to succeed in everything I do, this is the first time I've actually had to say, well, you know, I haven't been good enough.
Benji, after an unsuccessful stint in 2013 in Super Rugby, came back to the NRL, joining the Dragons. Benji would remind everyone of his talent. Often forgotten, Marshall came second for the Dally M medal and would lead the Dragons into the finals. Marshall would go on to play for the Broncos as well before getting his dream return to the West Tigers. Marshall has had a career resurgence, being called up for New Zealand twice in 2019 after elite displays for the West Tigers, as he still provides highlights late into his career. Marshall would be amongst the top of the league in try assists in his 2 seasons with the Tigers, showing that form is temporary but class is permanent. The Tigers' 2020 season fizzled out, and there was some conflict between upper management and Marshall as they told him his services were no longer required. Marshall's final game for the Tigers would end in injury, and it was a sour end to Benji's Tigers career. He was now a free agent and was potentially facing imminent retirement. This reality of retirement became even more realistic the further the 2020-21 off-season went. Unsure of his future, he asked his wife Zoe for guidance, who asked if he had given Wayne Bennett a call. Both Marshall and Bennett had a long-standing history together, as Wayne had coached Marshall to international glory with the New Zealand side and also at the Brisbane Broncos in 2016. Marshall mentioned his ambitions of winning a premiership before he concluded his career. Both senior halves partners in Adam Reynolds and Cody Walker were on board, and the contract was signed. Marshall, like he had his entire career, grabbed the opportunity with both hands and showcased some scintillating play. Providing a cool head and a perfect replacement option for the Rabbits halves, Marshall was an excellent addition. Round 7 against the Gold Coast Titans can be pinpointed to what Marshall still offered, with 2 tries and a try assist, which was absolutely vintage Marshall as he showed his class. Peter Sterling would sum it up pretty well.
In answer to the question, I've seen nobody who has played better than Benji Marshall for such a period of time. The longevity and his impact is better than anybody I've seen.
Yeah.
Marshall would contribute significantly all season long and would eventually find himself in the NRL Grand Final at the age of 36, the oldest player in the NRL. Marshall's career had gone full circle from 2005 as he looked to win his second title. Marshall would feature for a third of the grand final, and unfortunately South Sydney would just fall short. Many fans wondered if this would be Benji's last game, and on the 6th of October we were given that answer.
I started off my journey in rugby league as a small boy from Whakatane, chasing a dream, and I'll leave this game as a grown man who learned a lot of life lessons and I think turned into a pretty good person.
May have not been a fairy tale ending, but Benji didn't need that premiership to prove he was a champion. He'd already captured the hearts of footy fans globally over his 344 NRL matches, becoming the most capped New Zealand NRL player ever. He gave us 96 tries and 260 try assists over his illustrious career, whilst also being a premiership winner, a World Cup winner, and a Four Nations champion. His career transcended the sport itself, which is clear with what Benji mentioned he was most proud of.
The thing I'm most proud of is what I got told this morning, and that's I set a pathway for our family to follow that was different from the normal back home. Gave them something to aspire to, something to chase. Made it possible for them that if I can live my dream, they can live their dreams. So that's what I'll be most proud of.
We often recognise Benji's career as flashy with his steps and flicks, but he should also be remembered as a winner. His influence was more than just in his style of play, but the fearlessness he played the game with, even after career-threatening injuries. There has been no one as entertaining and influential to rugby league than Benjamin Quinton Marshall. Thank you for watching, guys. I wanted to make this video to commemorate the great career of Benji, the man that made me love the game of rugby league personally. I want to thank you for the joy you brought to myself and millions of footy fans over the years. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, hit that post notification bell, and as always, thank you for watching.